I hope so. I hope so. They said it's the case yesterday, but let's see.
Dear participants, welcome back. Hope everyone had a good break. We've discussed the jobs and the skills needed in the morning. Now we move on to hearing from industry experts and their perspectives on skills needs. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome our panelists and our dear moderator, Mr. Fahad Bataina, Stakeholder Engagement Director, Middle East ICANN, and he will be introducing our dear panelists and starting our session. Good luck, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Sarah, and good afternoon, everyone. Just fix this. So we have a session right before lunch. We try to be really nice and cool. So this is session 4 entitled Industry Perspective on Skills Needs. So we all know that digital transformation is largely driven by the private sector. So governments put the policies, it's really the private sector who translate things on the ground. Of course, private companies are at the forefront of digital transformation. They look at what's happening in the market, what's the consumer perception, try to evolve their products, try to build new products, hoping that these products can really fulfill the needs of the community and their client base. I have 4 prominent speakers on this session. So to my left, we have Ms. Sonia Janahi. She's a board member at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry here in the Kingdom of Bahrain. I have Ms. Naria Santa Lucia. She's the General Manager for Digital Inclusion and Community Engagement at Microsoft. Next to Naria is Mr. Ahmed Rashid Riyad. He's the Senior Director for Strategy and Industry Development at Huawei. And to the far left, we have Mr. Wissam Al-Qadi. He's the Vice President for Global Initiatives at SAP. Good afternoon, folks. So the format of this session will be that I start with a round of questions to my panelists. We'll then take a few questions from the floor, do maybe another round of questions, take another round of questions, another round of questions to the panelists, and then take another round of questions from the floor. And then we will wrap up the session with some advice from each and every one of our panelists. So Sonia, I'd like to start with you really. And you have very extensive experience in the private sector. So other than the fact that you're a board member with the Bahrain Chamber of Industry and Trade, you also have a few of your companies that you run. So tell us, what is the impact of digital technologies on skills needs from an entrepreneur and an employer perspective?
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here today and okay? Yeah, perfect. I always am told I have a soft voice, so I hope everybody can hear me. I'm happy to be here. I started my career working in a telecom company, Betelco, back in 1989, so that can tell you how old I am. But it also built me into who I am today and established a lot of things in me, especially in the term of looking at technology from a different angle and a different perspective. Now, we cannot understate today the need or the impact of the digital technologies on skills. It is very important because it just doesn't affect our position as workers or employees or employers. It affects everything about us in life. Everything we do in life today is affected with technology. I'm sitting here and I've got a phone in my hand to go over my notes that I've prepared. So this is a trend that has to be taken very seriously. And it also shows that there is a big need to develop human and social skills, which is very important, because without this development, then we will be left out based on how the market is evolving and how the globe is evolving. If we look at the IMF report, they indicate that 40% of jobs is going to be taken over by artificial intelligence. Fine, that's bad news, but let's look, there's always, you look at the glass half full or half empty. That's 40% more job opportunities of new skills, of new, positions. And this is how we need to see it. We shouldn't be afraid of digitalization. We shouldn't be afraid as the private sector about what's coming, the trend. We should embrace it and look at opportunities and see how we can train, how we can develop, how we can emphasize and create new job opportunities. And this goes for all age groups. It doesn't necessarily focus on youth. It even includes the older people. I see a lot of people today that are in, for example, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. My daughter works in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Strategic Department. Today she's enrolled in a course with Temkeen for data analysis and artificial intelligence. Now you would think, why would she need that? But she needs that if she wants to progress in what she's doing, if she aims at developing herself. So getting knowledge is something that not only doctors do anymore. Now we always say if you're in the medical field, you don't stop studying. Well, let me tell you this. No matter what field you are in today, you don't stop studying. And especially with the evolvement of technology that is happening and how it's affecting our lives and how it's positively affecting our lives. So as the private sector, we actually take this more on a positive scale rather than a negative scale, because there are jobs that will be created, new jobs that will be created, IT-related and technology-related and artificial-related skills. So you are enhancing and developing people rather than, diminishing and demising people. And that's basically the positive note. I'll just end one thing that PwC 2024 Global CEO Survey said that 69% of the CEOs think that generative AI will ultimately require most of their workforce to develop new skills. So that means that's new job opportunities that we have ready for everybody in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. That's quite interesting. Nari, I'd like to move over to you. So you've been working many years in the private sector with Microsoft. So you're probably well aware of the industry needs related to digital skills. So can you please tell us, how do you see Microsoft's role in fostering digital skills across industry sectors and government entities? And what are some of the main challenges that you need to overcome?
Yep. Thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much to the ITUD for gathering us here today. So I have the distinct honor of leading our skilling work, especially for reaching communities that are furthest from opportunity. We always start at Microsoft with our mission, which is, of course, to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And our team within philanthropies really gets to extend and work on extending that mission to all communities. This year alone, we have a goal to help reach 25 million people with skills, and specifically around generative AI. Sonia, as you were mentioning, a new technology that's come online. I think one of the main things in this role that I've seen for the past, a number of years are some of those challenges that you alluded to that I just want to address first, and then maybe we can get to some of the opportunities and the optimistic points as well. I think that we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that there are still 1/3 of the population that is not online, that do not have meaningful connectivity. And that's something that's always, on the back of our minds. I mean, not only just being online, but having access to electricity. Those are the hardest to reach communities, and we really do have to work in a multi-sectoral way if we're going to bring technology to every community in the world. So that's one challenge I think that we should be realistic about and think collectively on how to address that. Secondly, I think from the private sector perspective, where a lot of the hiring is happening, not just in enterprise companies like Microsoft, but also with SMBs, SMEs as well, the information about what roles we need and what jobs and what skills that we need are not necessarily going to be able to be given at a just-in-time way to governments and to educational institutions that are really training at scale. We have access to big data, LinkedIn, different metrics, But the governments, you all have access to all your labor statistics, and how can we share that information in a really effective way without the silos, and make sure that we have a system where we can continually pass information between one another. For example, according to LinkedIn, 68% of skills that we currently have, all of us in this room, will change by 2030. And the pace of this change is just being accelerated by AI. And now employers, like the ones that you also represent probably, are looking at skills often more than pedigree, which is very, very exciting. But if we don't have those skills signals back to the training institutions, to the public institutions, especially that can train at scale, there will continue to be a mismatch. And then finally, I do think there is a challenge with aligning our incentives. I had a conversation with our colleagues from the ITU just a few minutes before this panel, where I was talking about, from our perspective at Microsoft, we're really trying to get scale, reach as many people. We have a 25 million goal. Those are the pressures that I'm under. And I know that there are other pressures that the public sector are under, that maybe other institutions are under, and sometimes those are not aligned. And if we don't have movement between sectors, between these silos, so that we can understand where different incentives and what kind of things that we need to accomplish, I think is continually a problem. So how can we make sure we have movement, again, between the different sectors? Gatherings like this today are wonderful to bring civil society together, to bring governments, to bring the private sector together, but we need to do more of that. And really the reason why I want to just kind of emphasize, and I know there will be sessions on AI, but this multi-sectoral approach is especially important in times when we have technologies like Gen AI. We're mindful that it took 16 years for 100 million users to have a mobile device, 16 years. And it took 3 months for 100 million users to be on ChatGPT. 3 months. That's the pace of acceleration that we're really seeing. And we're already seeing from our own work trend index at Microsoft that 75% of workers are already using generative AI and finding it to be productive. That's great for the developed world, but what about all the women? What about young people across the world that have potentially an even more devastating gap that can be created by these technologies? So again, I'm looking forward to learning from the rest of the panelists and look forward to continuing our multi-sectoral conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Nadia. So I'll move on to you, Ahmed. So you are with Huawei and you are into strategic partnerships. So how do strategic partnerships help address the challenges and the needs of your customers and stakeholders at Huawei?
Sure, thanks very much, Fahad. I hope you can hear me clearly. So partnerships, I think the importance of it stems from the fact that the digital industry is one of the fastest moving industries in the world. And especially in the last recent years, and of course in the coming years, this change is going to be much faster in terms of speed and much bigger in terms of magnitude. And the digital skills is one of the cornerstones of this digital industry development and changing, that we have to make sure that we can address the challenge of getting the workforce to be extremely capable and adaptable to this kind of fast-moving change. So the idea of partnerships is that it gives us some sort of a idea or vision or a compass on where this change and trends are going forward. There's different types of partnerships that we have to be part of, because it's not anymore about a transactional engagement from one-way direction or away from a training center that kind of skill or reskill a workforce or recipients. It's not that anymore. It's an ecosystem thing. And this ecosystem must have a lot of stakeholders. We're talking about private sector, public sector, civil society, academia, international organizations as well, of course. And if you think about the different types of partnerships, one thing and one benefit of having this kind of partnerships and strategic partnerships to enable us to bridge the digital skills gap is the public sector role in the idea of creating partnerships with private sector to get the know-how from them, to get the solution provision kind of aspect, but also they can localize some sort of the global technology that's out there. Technology is global, but there is a localized way of implementing it, localized way of the priorities of the trainings and the certification and the skills that you need in a certain market or a community or a region. And a good example of that is actually, since we are in Bahrain now in the Middle East, I mean, Huawei has one of the biggest, I would say, exchange talent ICT competition that we call it. And in the last 3 years, it has been happening in the Middle East to try to address the priorities of this region. So in 2021, actually, it was in Saudi Arabia. 2022, it was in Oman. And last year, 2023, it was actually in Bahrain here, involving 27,000 ICT professional students, including 600 academic institutions, and working with more than 13 governments. So that's an example of partnerships that involve academic institutions, governments, and also a private sector. Another example of a partnership that is also academically led is the collaborative research and curriculum development. Because from one side, you have a cutting-edge research and research centers, academia, universities, but also need the perspective of solution private sector industry that can tell you that this research can be applicable at this moment and this frame of time. So this kind of practicality is also needed that cannot be handled alone by academic research institutions and also cannot be handled alone by industry or private sector. Another example of partnerships, and I'm really happy that I mean, the speakers also mentioned the soft skills and the other aspects. It's not only about technology, like technical skills of digital to address the digital skills gap. Also, you have two other elements. One, especially when we talk about generative AI and other emerging technologies, is regulations. And we need people who understand standardization process, regulations process. So it's not only about technicality of it, but also about the public policy aspect of it, the regulation knowledge, the standardization kind of process and knowledge as a part of the training that you need to provide for your workforce. Another aspect which I think is extremely important, and I think in the previous session also someone asked about that, was the idea of soft skills in terms of the interpersonal skills, languages, leadership. And that's a very huge gap that needs to be addressed to enable digital skills. So if we talk about digital transformation, part of it is digital technology, and the other part is a transformational part, which has to come from training and kind of capability and experience that we can provide only through these strategic partnerships. And mentioning that, and probably going to be my last point, is the Global Leadership Youth Program that we did with the ITU, Huawei and ITU, which is GYLP. And it's also a program that we try to focus on making sure that the youth are having the right leadership abilities, being involved in a lot of events, international organization events, that they can kind of be enabled into having their voice heard and having their technical capability and technical skill set kind of being seen. I was also very happy, for instance, to see one of the youth that we work with in this program. We're going to be speaking this next session here in this event. I didn't know, I just saw her name yesterday. So it's good to see that these kind of things are getting their fruits done. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ahmed. To end this first round of questions, I'd like to move on to Wissam from SAB. So, Wissam, you've been overseeing many of SAB's strategic projects on digital transformation. So what are you focusing on at the moment with regards to digital transformation, and how can policymakers and training institutes address these needs?
Absolutely. So I guess the emphasis here is to team up and collaborate with academic institutions, right? So we have a program, very robust program called SAP University Alliances Program, and we've got almost 3,000 members worldwide. And this like spans from Brazil to Australia. And I really think with these kind of changes, if you really want to embed this curiosity to learn and to adopt digital skills at a very young age, you really have to start not only from university level, but also high school. And then we have something called the Young Thinkers Program. And we've got a lot of schools in Germany, in Austria, and Dubai that is also part of this initiative. So I guess it's all about teaming up with academic institutions as a fundamental way to start building a generation of people who would understand technology and have the right skills to really succeed with purpose as well. Right? So if we talk about SDGs, I think the SDG 4, my favorite, quality education, it's fundamental to start anywhere. So if we don't have education, we're not going anywhere. And not only high school, because we're only here referring to formal education, right? But it has to also be beyond that. So that's why we teamed up also with coding schools worldwide, in Germany, in the US. And then you have to go where students can get this information, or learners. That's not all the students, learners, right? So we've also teamed up with Coursera, for example, and we put some of the courses there. Then we have to find a new way, an entertaining way of grasping education and enjoying the learning experience. And that's why we teamed up also with HEC Montreal. It's a business school in Canada. And we did a game with 3 scenarios where students can play these games and then learn about how, for example, to export, or how to enlarge your business, or how to take a green, let's say, perspective on investment. So these are different ways of making sure to reach out to students where they are, right? And whether they are at schools or universities or just in coding schools or just online, maybe flipping with their phones, and they still want to learn. So the learning, let's say, long-term thinking of learning and enjoying to be, curious, it has to be started at a very young age. And I guess the skills, I mean, from SAP perspective, the most recent one is AI for business, right? Because we're dealing with business processes. So it's important to see the capabilities of AI on how you can take the right decisions while connecting your data internally and externally with your customers, employees, etc., right? So AI would be definitely AI for business will be a very important skill. And then I would also say sustainability as equally as important, right? And again, we go back to data. You have to understand your data. There's tons of data that companies are producing. So they have to have the capability to understand the emission, to monitor the emission, to visualize them, and making sure that they're taking the right green decision and think sustainably for their business. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to open the floor for questions, if any questions. So please raise your hand, and maybe you can raise your nameplate just so that we can see your hands. See you at least. No questions? Is the panel very clear, super clear? Yes, we have a question over there and a question over there. So let's start with the lady over here, please. Please go ahead. Yeah, you.
Thank you very much. My name is Nini. I'm representing the Georgia National Communications Commission, which is the regulatory body for the field of telecommunications media, and we're also responsible for the development of media literacy and digital skills in the country. So thank you very much for the interesting perspectives you have provided. You have very well outlined several strategies and programs that are being used and can be used by the companies to upskill the current workforce. My question would be focusing on the issue of cooperation and coordination among industry and the regulatory authorities. And I would be grateful for your thoughts on what can be done by the regulatory authorities and governments to support the initiatives you are implementing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take the other question, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Abna from Ghana, Gefek. So my question is in relation to opportunity for internships, because for us in Ghana, we have a big chunk of youth we've trained in digital skills, but how well is industry ready to give these young ones the opportunity to practice their skills and build the first level of experiences before they get into proper jobs? And also, especially to Mr. Wissam, how do you collaborate with the various ministries, especially Ministry of Education, to incorporate some of your activities into the main curriculum? Because that's where the bunch of people are, especially the young ones. Looking at the Young Thinkers program, it would be awesome to start from the very basic schools so that they can build the required skills. So how do you work with the various ministries to get this done? And also, how global are you? Are you collaborating with any universities in Ghana and also some of the government agencies who are engaged in digital skills? And we would love to engage further. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll go with the gentleman over here, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Arazim Shehu from Nigeria. My question is straightforward. I'm trying to find out, is there any possibility of sharing with us if there is any kind of scientific approach or evidence-based way of identifying digital skills gap so that to ease and for us to have an effective bridging the digital skills gap? Thank you.
Yes, please, at the back.
Thank you. As the panel mentioned, there's a real need for lifelong learning and reskilling in the ongoing digital transformation. So my question to the panel is, how do we reach people who perhaps don't perceive themselves as traditionally technical, or those who, are going through reskilling or the historically disconnected?
Thank you. So let's start with the first two questions, actually, which are talking more or less about partnerships and collaboration. Would anybody like to take them? I mean, each one of you spoke about collaboration and on partnerships, so maybe you can share from your perspective in this regard.
I can.
Yes, please, Sonia.
I think one of the things we do in the Bahrain Chamber is that there is an open line between us and the public sector in different areas, and we talk to each other. They understand what is the shortages and the complications in the private sector. We understand what are the difficulties or challenges that the public sector is facing. And together we work on creating the policies that will add value to the economy on all scales. So it's all about dialogue. The public sector will not be able to identify what the private sector needs if they don't listen to the private sector, and vice versa. We also, as the private sector, need to have an open mind and understand what are the challenges that the public sector is facing. But through dialogue, we've managed today to create many policies and procedures that are adding value to both and creating a more sustainable economy. And that's basically, simply stated. We've done it. I've joined the Bahrain Chamber since 2018. I've been elected for 2 terms, and the volume of dialogue that we have on a daily basis with the public sector is incredible. And they're all open. So we can't say the public sector doesn't listen to us if we don't take the initiative to talk to them, to explain to them what are our challenges and what we need. And, it takes 2 to tango, as simple as that. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Could I also just respond on the specific question about the regulatory kind of aspect as well? I think that Microsoft, our posture has always been to share and to be as open as possible and to collaborate, to your point, Sonia, about that dialogue back and forth. And I think especially in this AI kind of landscape and generative AI, as this technology is coming on board, I know that our leader, Brad Smith, within our group, has really been, focused on the responsible AI principles and how can we share that with various governments and really work together to co-create this new world. And then on the question about the Ministry of Education and how do we kind of infuse the work, I think this is the key part of what we're all doing here. All of us, we are going to have these great programs we can incubate. I was just talking with Mia from ILO about a great program called Women in Digital Business that we're doing. It's a great kind of incubation pilot, let's say. But we can pilot as many things as we want as the private sector. And we're going to continue to pilot those things, right? But if they don't become picked up and become integrated into the ministries of education, into the departments of labors around the world, it's not going to really make that impact and the scale that we need. So I think for all of us in the private sector, I love when we collaborate, and we're collaborating with SAP, with GenU, and a number of different things. If we can come together to kind of double down together and then take those to the governments and really figure out a way on a few things instead of all the different ideas that we have, I think that's something that, would really love to see. I know that Microsoft, and I know all of us, we were chatting on the sidelines, would love our continued collaboration as well.
Probably also I'll add something, right? I think we're, in this region, we are very privileged to have governments that have long-term, let's say, projects and visions, and big part of it is to make sure they invest in human capabilities and skills. So we always have those government meetings at a very high level, because the first thing they want to hear when they meet with you is not about your solution or your technology, but how are you investing in our country? How are we making sure that they have the right skills, right, whether from high school perspective or university. So I think the alignment, whether it's in Saudi or Bahrain or Qatar, it's really a case study to be shared across the globe, because they are really after getting the right skills for their citizens. So I don't think you just have to talk more often, but the collaboration is there, the interest is there, and they have very much influence over universities as well and high schools. You just have to make it more of a common thing to update them with what's going on. Thank you.
So there was a question also about scientific approach on identifying gaps in digital skills. I think the previous panel did address parts of it, but I don't know if any of my panelists would like to add to that.
What's the question again?
So scientific approach on identifying gaps in digital skills.
I can just quickly say something about that. So the way we see it as the industry, we're very good at solutions. We're not great at problems, you know. So we know how to provide a solution to a certain problem, but we need someone to tell us what are the global challenges or what is the local challenges, so that we can kind of tailor our solutions to solve these kind of challenges. A good example, and I'm happy that Wasim mentioned the SDG Sustainable Development Goals. This gave us a map when it was done in 2015 for the global challenges and what we should be addressing, right? Same goes for this exact question. The ideas of what is the gaps. We can know what is technology or what the technological trends happening globally, especially, I work in standardization standards, so I can tell you, okay, this is basically what's going to look like in the coming 5 to 10 years, with what all the industry, the companies we're working with, or industry partners working on. But then I have to know from a government perspective, from a regulatory perspective, what's your priorities in terms of the country or the market? What do you want to focus on? What's your strategy? What's your policy? Are you working towards an applied AI, for example, talk about AI, or fundamental research on AI? And that's completely different things. So we need to meet in the middle, where we can tell you what's the global perspective in technology and digital skills on the global market is, especially talking from like big organizations or big companies, industry-wise. But then also we have to match it towards the needs on the local market, on the regional market, in terms of policy, and also in terms of the priorities of this market or country.
Would anybody else like to add anything? Maybe.
I would only, I 100% agree that a lot of the skills are so locally based, and that's really important. I also think that there is, a lot of work that's done across so many of the different governments, but also in the kind of big data realm, where we can take jobs and roles and map the skills. And we do need to have more of a common taxonomy, I think, so that the skills can be portable from job to job. I think that's the trend of where we're going to, especially as we think more about kind of the skills-based model. One plug I will make on LinkedIn, though, that I think the most fascinating piece of research I've seen recently has been around generative AI and kind of the signals that we're seeing already about skills in generative AI. And there is a report that they're continuing to refresh quarterly, where they're looking at the different skills and how they're going to be augmented, disrupted, or be accelerated because of AI. And it's definitely worth noting, because some of the things are very surprising, right? Like a lot of the different, like locksmiths, will never be replaced by generative AI, but there are a lot of things that teachers, for example, do right now that can very much be augmented. So just worth looking at that as well.
All right, so I'll return back to you, Sonia, and would like to ask you, what recommendations would you give to policymakers and other stakeholders in emerging markets related to the development of their digital skills landscape, particularly in the context of entrepreneurship and SME growth? You did touch upon this while you were answering one of the questions, but maybe you may want to expand further to that.
Before I touch on policymakers, let me go back a step, and I think this starts from home. And we need to, at home, change our mindset and how we raise our children. And we need to instill in them that today, getting into skills-related education is not the end of the world. It's the beginning of the world. A lot of people, families especially, and I'm a mother, I have 2 daughters, and You know, we always think, no, you have to be a doctor, you have to be an architect, you have to be an engineer, but that's not the future anymore. You know, even my niece, she just graduated high school, and she wanted to go into medicine, but also I asked her, okay, what future are you looking at? And she said, genetic science. I said, okay, that's fine, that's excellent. We need to instill in them that, you know, interest and creativity to apply for new opportunities. And, you know, when I talked to my niece and then her father says, but will she get a job? I said, does she need to work in Bahrain? If, let's say, tomorrow we don't have a lab that she can work at for genetic science, you have the world today. And being male or female is not an issue. And as long as she can, you know, enhance in this field and give back to the world, not just to the community, but to the world, then why would it be a concern if there would be a job for her tomorrow in Bahrain or in the region or in Europe or US? So there's always an opportunity somewhere, and especially if you encourage the children from a young age to focus on taking this trend, and that being a doctor and an architect, with all due respect, or an accountant is not what is available in the market today. You need to go beyond that to focus on skills, to get that specialized education. And this is how it should start. And then we have the policymakers, where we need the policies, we need the protection, we need the involvement similar to what is happening in Bahrain, and Bahrain has a vision for that. And this is the beautiful thing, that Bahrain is ranked highly when it comes to its index on technology. We are ranked 3rd in the GCC and 7th globally, which shows you that as a country we have a vision where we're going in terms of digitalization. Ministry of Education, or High Council for Education today, is talking to the chamber on the skills, the future skills jobs that are needed for this market, and what the Ministry of Education needs to do to ensure that schools, universities are all in line with the requirement, because you don't want to reach a stage that there's nobody to fill up the jobs, and you have people that are unemployed. And today we have a very low unemployment rate in Bahrain, and one of the reasons is because there is a vision. There is a vision of what's happening in the future. There is a vision of how we can handle it. We talk to the different stakeholders, and we make sure that we work together to ensure that we reach that target, and to have, you know, a rating that is more internationally aligned. And last but not least, lifelong learning. It never stops. There's no end to it. Every day there's a new technology, there's a new trend, there's new information. Regardless of what's your age, you today learn, and you have to accept this fact. I'm 57 years old, and I learned from a 12-year-old much more than I can learn from somebody in my age. And we have to be open to that. Doesn't mean, you know, our IQ is less or something. The world is changing, and we need to be adaptable and acceptable to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Nadia, I'd like to return back to you. So what do you think the role of governments versus the private sector is in terms of developing skills and closing the digital gap there?
Yes. First of all, I want to meet your niece, because she sounds like she has her future set up so well. You know, I think this is kind of relates back to what I was saying before, which is really that, you know, I think the private sector can incubate some ideas and can, you know, go fast and move quickly to try out different things. But it's really the role of the governments to scale and to make this be widely accessible. So how can, you know, it's not passing the buck, but how can we really work together to co-develop some ideas that we can incubate for you, and then can we de-risk those for governments then to take on and to implement really in that wide way. I also realized we did not address the Ghana question, which I think was for SAP. But I think that that internship question is so interesting, and to what you said, with technology being able to connect so much of the world, you now don't have to stay necessarily. I mean, you can live in Ghana but work remotely. How can we think about more remote opportunities, remote internships? And on that internship front, you know, this is another area where we really look to, I think, the government partners to help private sector, again, maybe de-risk for us, to take chances on different individuals that may not have that pedigree or that pathway. So again, just another opportunity for some partnership across public and private sector.
Ahmed, so what in your view is the role of the public sector and other actors, of course, in helping the private sector to address the digital skills needs and kind of close the gap?
How much time do we have for this one?
Well, 4 minutes, let's start. Maybe we can give you more.
I think this one can go for hours. No, I think it's a very important question, honestly. And I mean, we were talking about the partnership, public-private partnership, and I think the role of public sector is very important. It also is very diverse, right? I think one of them is definitely doing the right policy for I mean, lifetime learning, as you're saying. Like, learning never stops, and there's always reskilling opportunities. And policy for that sounds like easy thing, but it's very hard because you need to create some sort of policies that can make some incentives maybe for companies to reskill their own workforce, and at the same time also some sort of funds for individuals who are not in the workforce yet to have some sort of the enablement skills to be able to join this kind of workforce. And that's a policy-based kind of approach from markets, regions, or governments. That's one thing. The other thing is having the right regulatory environment, I would say, to make sure that companies can cooperate together in a proper, secured manner to create this kind of synergy between different technologies across the ICT value chain. So you have different types of corporates, different types of industries. Usually they work in silos in a certain government or market. But if you manage to create some sort of a collaborative innovation hubs or things that make this kind of different companies work together with academic institutions under a certain regulatory framework that's secured, but also would provide the innovation kind of incentives, the idea that they can work on problems that is being presented by the government is a very important thing. And that brings us to a third thing that the government can do, is that they can provide their challenges, they can provide their problems to SMEs, to startups, to private sector in their own market or region, so that now we know where to try to channel our solutions for. So when you provide your problems with the government or public sector, it manages or encourages the workforce or ICT professionals to try to find very innovative solutions to solve that. Another aspect which I think is extremely important from public sector as well is the idea of the E&I, diversity, equality, or equity and inclusion, right? We need to have more diverse workforce that are reskilled, and we make sure that we have equal opportunities for all kind of diverse, like we talk about gender equality, talk about women inclusion for STEM fields, and this kind of skills is extremely important, and research shows that is much better in terms of outcomes when we work on this and target this specifically. Another thing that public sector also can do, I think it's also very important, is the idea of what we're all trying to say here is actually a supply side. Like if you're training workforce, if you're training ICT professionals, you provide trainings and make sure they have the right skills, all this is supply side. Someone, I think from Ghana, mentioned internships, and that's the demand side. You need to have something that these people who are now skilled can actually put in action, put in place what they actually learned. So maybe it can be internships or positions in industry or in the governments or in different civil society or NGOs or whatever, but you have to have somewhere where we can channel this kind of new skills learned to be put in action as applicable. And this is when we can meet that supply side and demand side. And maybe the last point, and definitely not least, is that digital skills from one side is about reaching the top in terms of cutting edge technology, making sure that we talk about AI, emerging technologies, the latest thing, but government also has the responsibility of digital literacy. So they need to make sure that the bottom line, the baseline of skills is there somehow to make sure that they are at least users, if not innovators, to technology and applications. I mean, according to ITU, 40% of the population is unconnected, but also according to ITU, 90% of the population are covered. So it's not a coverage issue. It's a meaningful connectivity issue. Part of it is affordability, of course, and cost, but also part of it is digital literacy, that people need to understand how to use this kind of technology. So I think this would be more or less, from a very high level, the public sector role that we'd like to see as an industry.
So Wissam, if you could name one solution that would address private sector needs when it comes to the digital skills gap, what would that be?
Yeah. So I don't think we can think of one solution. There's no magic stick here, right? There's solutions, but I think there's one strategy that could be proven to work, is to really think and plan with a certain mindset of ecosystem partnership from the beginning. Just map out who are your stakeholders, whether it's a government, whether it's your own customers, your employees, academic institutions, etc. And then sometimes you don't have to invent the wheel, right? So you might leverage some existing partnerships and a program, like, for example, Generation Unlimited, where Microsoft is on it, SAP is on it, and then you could reach to masses, right, by joining forces, and it's very effective. But then talking about also collaboration with government, and a good example would be with the Saudi government, where we had to co-plan, co-create, and innovate a new reskilling programs. We got more than 300 engineers, so these are very successful young engineers in Saudi, of our SAP customers and partners, and we took them to our office in San Ramon in California, and they spent 4 weeks to learn, like hardcore about coding and, AI and all the emerging technologies. So again, sometimes you just have to find out what's there in the market, if there's any government initiatives, if there's any, UN initiatives, etc. And then if you're close to your partner, you're close to your ecosystem, you can co-develop something meaningful with them that could be successful, and it could be so you can scale it to the wider, society. So it's not one solution for sure.
Okay, so we'll open the floor for further questions. So any questions? Yes, please, lady from Ghana.
Thank you very much. Naria mentioned that you can stay in Ghana and work remotely. We all believe that remote working is a new normal, but I believe it's still engaging because you find most remote jobs and it's based in a particular jurisdiction. I want to understand why most organizations do that and how can we break these chains?
My name is Dr. Labanya. I'm from South Sudan. My question is on partnership. As we partner with and collaborate, have we thought about languages, translations? Some of us wouldn't like to lose our local languages. And as of last year, we've introduced local languages back into the curriculum. And in some business areas, when we talk about the SMEs, you realize that the majority of the population in some countries are those who have got either partial education or no education at all. So is there any way or means of ensuring that collaboration includes transitioning languages into digital transformation? And as stated before, that we can start at an early age. As we start at those ages, I believe it is also very important that our children don't lose track of using their tongues in pronouncing words in their mother tongues and in other languages. So please, can we find out whether there's been any way and means of ensuring that languages transition into digital transformation?
So let's address these two questions first and then go for another round of questions. So would anybody like to talk more about remote working? Yes, please.
Give an example.
Please.
I can give you an example on the remote working. And Bahrain is a small country. We have a population of 1.6 million almost. And in 2019, when COVID happened, of course, everybody went remote. And since then, until today, I have not seen my head of accounts and accounts team face to face. I swear, I have not. I've seen them maybe at a wedding or a party, but not in the company, in the job, because we got so used to them working, off-site, and us weekly communicating with them, whether through Zoom or Teams or WhatsApp or whatever, and getting everything done so efficiently. So I said, you know what, let's continue. And it was so efficient. They don't have to leave home, they don't have to waste time and come to the office. I actually gave up the office space, so I saved and rent and used that space for other more efficient things and income generating. And I don't mind, if they're doing other things, that's fine, as long as the work is done. And the efficiency level increased by maybe 200% because they have the flexibility of being at home, being with their kids at their school, sometimes even traveling, being away. That's fine with me as long as the work is done. So it is possible, but there is the element of trust and an element of responsibility that both the employer and the employee have to understand and take into perspective. But this is a genuine example that I've been facing, and it's working for me. It's working for me, it's working for my team, and everybody's happy at the end of the day. So I think that's one example that I can share with you.
Would anybody else like to add?
I think for remote work, for SAP, for example, right? We were almost very flexible. You could work from wherever you want. And of course, during COVID, it was more and more flexible. But at one point, we realized that the culture is starting to change, right? Especially if you're dealing with a global company and lots of diversity and big teams, and you're producing technology, you have to co-innovate, you have to collaborate. So then, as a general rule, we said that you have to come back 3 days per week, right? But if it makes sense as well. So you can always work probably at a customer side, at a university, or if it really makes sense to be there. So managers, right, are empowered to take this decision if it makes sense for employees to be in the office or not. But certainly, there is merits of being in the office and collaborating and networking and socializing rather than having completely remote work. So I would like the balance between the two.
There was a question about languages and integrating languages and into all of this digital transformation. Yes, please.
Maybe I can do both, and I'll try to be quick. I think on the one thing, I totally agree, and I love the accounts manager story, and I think the kind of hybrid model is probably one where people are moving to. On the one point about these remote jobs that are specifically keeping in an area that's outside of a jurisdiction, I think we should try to really continue to promote that, especially as kind of global companies too, to hire from different firms and groups that have that set up, because I do think it's a whole opportunity that we can open up and continue to open up. The one pause I have is for young people. I think this goes back to the soft skills, and this is kind of what you're alluding to, which is it's very hard. I know during the pandemic it was very hard for earlier in career people because they wanted to go back to the office. They wanted to make connections. They wanted that water cooler talk, that time with a mentor that you can build up. And people who have been in the workplace for a long time like us, we have those skills, but if you're early in career, we may not. So let's really try to remember to have our young people have those remote opportunities if they can't leave their community, but also help develop those soft skills. So that's the one piece. The language and localization, this is the hardest thing as skilling people that we have to deal with. But in the past year, I have started to become so excited because of generative AI. And I think this is an example of where it can really change the game. The cost of localizing content has just gone down for us because of generative AI, because we can take that first pass. Of course, still use a human to make sure that it's in the local context, and we provide that. But I can just see this technology getting so much better so that we can have more and more like kind of indigenous local languages that we can make sure that content is developed within. But that has to happen, and it's even more of an equity issue to make sure that we have developers that can also speak in those languages, that we train the models with those languages. So again, this is a huge opportunity, but only if we do it with deliberation and make sure that the data and the training are all there as well. So again, that need for that multi-sectoral approach.
Any further input?
Just quickly on the language one, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, this is exactly how I would answer for it, but maybe just to add something very small. when we talk about digital skills and technology and technical skills, we need to learn Python, right? That's a language. So the idea here is that definitely we have to localize things so that we can reach, come closer to the markets, but also at the same time when we talk about enablement and empowering youth or ICT professionals, they also have to learn what is out there, right? And there was a discussion, I think it was the previous panel, between like learning English in Gabon, which is a French-speaking country, and that's exactly is the point. So we try to kind of, again, meet in the middle, but I think one of the most important thing to talk about soft skills is to learn the language of whatever market you want to work for, even physically or remotely, and part of that is not only technology, it's also the languages. We actually did, Huawei, we did a partnership, going back to partnerships, with UNESCO on creating the first AI course in Arabic, right? It was cool, it was interesting, and we, exactly to the point that was made actually by Naria, is that we tried to kind of teach them more about prompt engineering in Arabic, so that they can use generative AI with their own local language to get the results that a model like ChatGPT 4.5 can give you the answers to it in your own language as well. So again, we're meeting in the middle, but I do think personally that you need to really make sure that you have to learn the language of whatever market or work you want to do for. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with Ahmed. Like the reality on the ground that English is widely being, spoken worldwide, and for us as a global company, we have to collaborate with all the countries, and English, let's say, takes us all together, right? So if someone doesn't have good English, so probably their chances of, developing and growing within the company is very limited, right? So I agree that we should look into having localized and, to reach out to new people in underserved communities. But reality on the ground, again, the customers, the governments, the UN, like English is an important language for the time being. Maybe this will change. So it would be an important skill, I think fundamental skill, if you really want to find a job with all this tech, emerging tech.
So maybe another round of questions. The gentleman over there. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the nice presentations. I just wanted to find out, I think, and my question is directed to Wissam, when you spoke something about the training of young children in Germany. Are we having some deliberate programs that are focused with maybe young persons with special needs? By that, I mean people with disabilities. Because my understanding is that persons with disabilities may require maybe specialized tools and equipment as far as we talk about digital transformation or digital skills. So do we have specialized programs focused at these people? And then secondly, I think in line with a question from my sister from Ghana on internships, do we also consider maybe some special considerations for such people? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So as we're speaking, as university alliances, so far I have to say that the programs, they don't have a specific, let's say, component for specially enabled individuals. But SAP, if you took out our CSR initiative, then there's lots of different programs to make sure that we're reaching out to underserved communities. And one of them could be like they're having some difficulties in learning. So this is probably more covered in the CSR. But from university alliances, we're also looking into how we can incorporate that to make sure that we're, reaching out, in a more inclusive manner as well.
Yes, at Microsoft, we definitely focus our CSR efforts, a lot of them on accessibility and on training for accessible for people with disabilities. So within all of our kind of priority markets, we have partners on the ground, especially nonprofits that work in these communities. And so, I'm happy to kind of provide that information. Also, everything we do at Microsoft, with our products, we try to be accessible by design, and that's kind of a framework that we leverage. So definitely kind of look at those principles. Again, I think the AI is a huge area where people can leverage generative AI to, especially if you have low vision, any other neurodiversities, other kind of things that may have prevented folks from skilling up and joining the workforce, that we're really seeing a lot of progress on. And then on the internship point as well, I think that this is something that is very, companies can hold spots, and we definitely have internship programs like our LEAP internship, where we bring in people who don't have the CS or programming degree, but we kind of train them in almost like a side-by-side apprenticeship model. But again, these are just going to be one-off things, so I think there needs to be some kind of new multi-sectoral approach, partnership, where we can really think of internships at scale. So,
if I can just just to also emphasize, I'm a member of the International Organization of Employers under the ILO, and we have collaborated with Microsoft for 5 African countries and trained more than 20,000 young Africans, in digitalization and technical knowledge, so that we can make them ready for the, to have the future skills that the job requirements are there in Africa. And this related to specifically 5 African countries, but I'm sure there's more programs that we can work with Microsoft to support as many countries as possible as well.
Well, thank you very much to the panelists. My question is really related to kind of this note on diversity of inclusion, and it's similar to the point on language. A lot of the conversation on skills need really targets younger populations, but there is a question of generational learning, right? So when we look at older generation across the board, particularly if you look at in bureaucracy, in government, a lot of these people in decision-making are on the older side of things, where a simple change of interface creates a lot of confusion to that population. So from an industry perspective, what skills or how can industries really build those training models for older generations, or create also peer or to younger peers type learning across the board, so it becomes a two-way conversation with younger and older across the board, again, in policy, in industry, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm Tsibani Ntatlapa from Wits University in South Africa. I think the question that I want to ask is linked to some extent to the last question, but very specifically on the role of those older generation in the employment perspective, because these are the people that make decisions for employment as well. So we have heard from the morning of the case that you train people in digital skills, but they don't get employment, that the decisions are made by the people that probably have not been trained to understand the changes that are there and the changes to, to the type of people that they have to employ. As the companies that are multinational, that support governments as well as other companies that do this employment, do you actually have programs that target those that are the decision makers in terms of understanding the changes?
Any reactions?
I can address the last question. One of the reports that was very interesting that I was reading was by the IFC, and this was issued in 2019, which basically said by 2030 in Europe and sub-Saharan African countries, 600 million jobs will be available that need digital skills. So this is a major opportunity, not just for the future in terms of employment, but this is an opportunity even for universities, schools, training centers. And this is a business opportunity for the private sector to capitalize on, because if there's 600 million jobs by 2030, and that's 2030 is around the corner, who's training them? Where are the institutions that are supporting and training and developing, the individuals that are needed for these jobs? So there is a lot of opportunities, but we need to capitalize on these opportunities. And it goes both ways, be it the public sector, private sector, be it the individuals. So it's cohesive. Everybody has to play his or her role, as an organization, as an institution, as a government. And it doesn't work if just the government puts the policies and strategies and there's no private sector supporting it and putting the infrastructure for it and ensuring that you meet what is necessary or attend to what is necessary to fill these jobs. So opportunities are there. And as I said in the very beginning of this panel discussion, let's look at it with the glass half full rather than half empty. There is so much opportunity, and this doesn't just relate to youth. This relates to all age groups, but we need to have the infrastructure, we need to have the policies, but we need to also have the education system, the skill development system, the skill licensing system in every country to ensure that people are ready to take over these jobs. Thank you.
I think that this question is so appropriate, and it really gets to the lifelong learning issue that many of us have identified. There is, we did a little bit of research previously at Microsoft, and we found, I can't remember the specific percentage, but there is a steep decline in employers providing training. I think previously there used to be a kind of a compact or agreement with your employer. You would go somewhere, you stay there for your whole career, you get trained, you get upskilled, you learn, and that deal is no longer the case. We've all moved from employer to employer now, and at the same time, there's very little investment by employers often in the upskilling of individuals. And especially for those SMBs, the small and medium businesses, they're trying to just get their bottom line fulfilled, much less having that time to invest in their employees. So I think this is where, again, government, can we leverage some of the workforce systems, the education systems that exist, TVET, to upskill adults as well. I think it's incumbent on folks like Microsoft, SAP, Huawei, all of us that have content and curriculum to make that free and available. We have, with LinkedIn Learning, a number of free courses, hundreds of courses, especially on generative AI, that people can take advantage of. And I think the more that we kind of make that the norm for us to help individuals upskill is going to be better. I love that question about leveraging young people to upskill adults. We do have a couple programs around the world where we do just that, where young people are tech change makers, and then they can help, seniors or more seasoned individuals learn about technology. Those kind of programs are really great because they're win-win as well.
Just a quick one. I think this is one of the most important questions, and I think one of the hardest as well to answer, honestly, because it has to be unpacked to multiple components. So one of it, when we talk about like older generation, older people, are we talking that they're older people in the workforce, and then that's a reskilling problem, or they're older people who are unemployed, and that's an unemployment problem, and that's completely different things. And then also when we talk about, I totally agree that there's a huge decline in the development programs within corporates and within industry, probably in the recent years, 10 years or something. I think it has been so much of a decline because people tend to care more about the experience that you have in the industry rather than what's kind of your skills needed. But I think this has to change now with this very fast, as I said, change in terms of speed and very big in terms of magnitude. So you need to really be reskilled in terms of educational development programs so that you can be more employable or more employable for a higher or different positions in various industries. And the issue here is, when we talk about that, we're talking about the idea of making sure that the market can provide, or the government can include this as a sort of investment, not as a sort of cost. So if we see reskilling and training as a cost, it might decline, because it's kind of a CSR kind of thing, like a social responsibility that we have to do. But if we see it as an investment, that this actually makes the unemployment much less in a market or in a government, that makes actually the competitive advantage of technology much higher, then that's a different discussion. And we definitely cannot do it as an industry alone. And I think industry has to promote it It's also responsibility of the public sector, and it has to be mediated by international organizations. That's why we're here, like ITU, like ILO. I mean, these organizations are the one who can bridge this gap between private sector and public sector from a global perspective in terms of challenges and from a local priorities in terms of markets and regions. So I think the question is basically, it has to be unpacked to three different things: reskilled, unemployment, and also the idea of cost versus investment in terms of skilling and training programs.
Would you like to add?
Yeah, I mean, generally I have to agree that most of the programs are geared towards young people, right? And I think this should change, definitely, right? But it takes a lot of people, a lot of ecosystem partners to do this. And that's why, again, back to the illusional magic stick, right? It's not going to be solved by one party, by one solution. It's a strategy, a long-term strategy where people need to be the right people at the table and discuss this and have a very long-term plan for it. But I think we should act fast on it, to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you. To wrap up this panel, a few words of advice from you, Sonia.
Lifelong learning. Never give up on learning, and there's no age that indicates you should stop learning. You know, it's just continuous, and be positive. There's so much opportunities that we can grab, especially when it comes to the private sector, and we can work with all the stakeholders to ensure that we have a better future for all.
Nadia?
I would say check out the generative AI if you have not already. I think it's a really great way. Like, I could not make a pivot table in Excel. I do not know Python, but I was able to just in my natural language make a website with using Python. So try it and check it out. And then my other thing I really do think is important about the equity question is, you know, we all have people in our world that we have opened a door for, given an opportunity to, and I think it's a personal call to everybody to open a door or give an opportunity to somebody who may not have had the privileges that we have had, and it's going to be especially important in this world of skills and continued skills building.
Well, I mean, with generative AI now, knowing Python is not an advantage, huh? Like, everyone can code now with generative AI. So, no, I mean, for me, I think we have to start from the need, and we have to check what's out there in terms of global trends, but we don't have to copy it. We just need to tailor our own needs when it comes to digital skills. So I always think we need to really start small, dream big, and move fast.
Yeah, I think I'll bring something totally different here. One skill that I think everyone should be dealing with and learning is to manage your mental health, right? So with everything that is happening, the amount of stress, whether for learning, accelerating, growing, with everything that's happening in this world, managing your mental health would be a very important skill. And this should be learned at a high school level as well.
Okay, with that, I wrap up this panel. I would like to thank my panelists for this very interactive discussion. Thank you. I was told that lunch is downstairs like yesterday, and we reconvene in this room at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fahad, and thank you very much to our dear panelists for an eye-opening session. Ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Fahad said, we are heading to lunch now downstairs in the restaurant. Before we go, I just want to remind you that we're meeting back here at 2 p.m. for the Digital Innovators and Entrepreneurs session, and you are reminded to stop by the ITU booth to meet representatives of the ATC from the University of West Indies and WITS South Africa, as well as the DTC in the Philippines, DICT. And for those of you who did not sign up for the giveaways, please do so, and we'll meet back here at 2 p.m. See you then. Our dear participants, lunch is delayed until 1 p.m., so you can have a quick break and then lunch will be served at 1. We apologize for that.